Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's ACHQ webinar. The title of this is called The Adaptive Leader, Integrating Values and Strategy to Thrive Under New Leadership. I am Joseph Watkins. I am the Manager of Business Operations at ABSI here at ASAE, and I am more than honored to be your moderator today. We are gathering at a time when the association landscape is being rewritten. Leadership today isn't just about managing people. It's about navigating a convergence of complex forces that are actually changing how we work, where we work, and who we work with. I want to remind you all that questions are welcome. So I love that everybody told us where they are from. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat or the Q&A portions. I'll send a reminder as well. So to help us navigate this, I want to briefly go over our agenda, which today is structured around taking a closer look at our four critical pillars. So first, we will examine multi-generational teams. What that will allow us to do is explore how to bridge the gap between distinct working styles to turn generational differences into a strategic asset. Second, we'll look at technology, how AI and digital transformation are reshaping our daily workflows and what it means to lead in a tech-first environment. Third, we will discuss the flattened hierarchy. We will identify strategies for influencing decisions and driving results in organizations where the traditional command and control structure is disappearing. And finally, we will look at the environment. We'll analyze the external pressures and cultural shifts that create the context we are all operating in today. So we have a lot of ground to cover, so we can dive right in. But first, I would like to welcome our amazing speakers. Carol Vernon is a certified executive coach. For the last 20 years, she has worked with association senior and rising leaders. Her focus is helping them fine-tune how they work with others, communicate, and show a strong executive presence. Prior to coaching, Carol was an association leader for 10 plus years, responsible for leading teams, projects, and budgets. And early in her career, she served as a congressional aide. Second, Kathy Shanley is a certified association executive and was executive vice president at National Medical Associations for 30 years. She is a member of the Forbes Coaches Council and specializes in leadership and team coaching. Thank you both for being here and honestly for your time. So to
Yeah,
kick
thanks
things
for having us.
off, we have to start with the people. Our workforce is more diverse in age and experience than ever before. So let's take a closer look at multi-generational teams and how to turn those differences into strengths. Carol?
Joseph, thank you. Hey, great to be with everyone. Thanks for making this time. I know Kathy and I have lots of info. I'm going to dive right in by taking us. Joseph, do you want to move a slide forward for us? We're going to start by looking at the five generations. And Joseph, take us even the next slide, if you would. We're going to look, as I say, at the multi-generational teams. We're going to talk about what this means to how we lead or be led in today's workplace. We're going to need to be very careful. Multi-generational, it's really easy to stereotype. So we're going to be really careful around that. I'm going to share info, but we're also going to we're going to watch for this. We're going to talk about how values have played a very big part in this. Really, when we think about it, it drives generational differences, but belief systems, worldviews, what we've experienced in the workplace, what has happened, not just in the workplace, rather, but across the world. We're going to talk about the transparency of this, and we're identifying this, the importance of this. This is not something, again, that's underneath, down here. It's right out there. We want to be thinking about this and talk about the benefits and the opportunities. Kathy and I really want to partner with Joseph here to make sure we really highlight the opportunities that these trends, shifts, things we're seeing in the workforce look like. And we're going to talk about how this impacts agendas in terms of generational pieces. We right now, and I don't think I'm shocking anyone here, we've got five generations in the workplace. They say this is the largest gap ever. And you may say, oh no, maybe well we've had that before. We'll touch on each of them pretty quickly. We don't spend too much time in that, but we've got traditionalists, we've got boomers, we've got baby boomers, we've got Gen Xers, we've got millennials, we've got Gen Zs. This means, again, watch the stereotypes here, but this means we've got to navigate different communication styles and different, certain Kathy and I are definitely going to talk about this. In addition to communication styles, we have like really basic ways we communicate differently. We communicate in different ways. We have different motivators. We have different values, huge difference. We have different work preferences that can mean different work agendas. This is not good. This is not bad. This is really about how do we work? How do we want to adapt? How do we turn this into opportunities? We're going to get into solutions in just a minute, and talk more about, of course, this is going to require adaptability, a lot of empathy, a lot of opportunity to understand more about each other, a lot focused on inclusion. I mean, the benefits here are just enormous. The benefits of working across generational are like, oh my gosh, broader perspectives, richer discussions with people who have totally different experiences. I think about how we really can leverage other people's, and I would say everyone's contribution. It's really different. Think about the innovation, the idea of combining seasoned wisdom with new ideas. One doesn't necessarily be better or worse. It's just the opportunities. Think about mentorship. Oh my gosh, this is like an unbelievable. More experienced people can learn from less experienced people. Less experienced people have a lot to offer and can learn from more experienced people. There's so much in here, that impact it. Very briefly, just to make sure we're looking at it, quickly from the same space. We've got traditionalists in the workplace. As their name would imply, they tend to focus on work in a more traditional way. So as Kathy and I move through this, think about the traditionalists. They're born, and there are traditionalists in our workforce, which is phenomenal. Born in the mid 20s to the mid 1940s. People who are more traditional look at workplace, that sort of the idea of more structure to it. They're used to hierarchy. That's really much more comfortable. They value the structure of workplace, much like boomers, baby boomers, born 46 to 64. They also take a little bit more of the traditional workplace. They place great value on structure, hard work. This is where you start. Well, are you a workaholic? It's like, no, these are some of we want to dump those stereotypes and like think these are some generational pieces that used to our advantage can be phenomenal. They tend to value experience. They tend to value experience. They tend to value longevity. They tend to value loyalty. Gen Xers, born 65 to 80, tend to be more pragmatic. This is where we start to see a little bit of a shift. Tend to be more self-reliant, value more autonomy. Think about a workforce made up right now. Our workforce in 25 is made up more than 50% of a boomer and a Gen X. Boomers again tend to be more value the longevity. Gen Xers tend to be more self-reliant, more independent. They value autonomy. They value work-life balance. Think about this. Think about the idea of this is when we start talking about well-being. Something today in the workforce. Kathy and I will certainly be touching on that today. Really important. And this is again, not all of this is how do we use this as opportunity? How do we think of it this way? Next, we got millennials. Okay, so traditional boomers, Gen X. Now we're into millennials. This is 1981 too, and you see 96. Could be 1996, could be 2000. But think about somebody born during that period. This is where we start to see a bit of a shift. Because remember, if you're born in this period, you grew up with rapidly advancing technologies, significant economic changes. Think about what was going on for people in the earlier in their workforce. Millennials tend to be more purpose driven. They tend to look for the social responsibility. They look for more flexible work arrangements. They tend to be more open-minded. Next, we're going to Gen Zs. Gen Zs, 1996 to about 2019, rather 2009, 2012. You have to be pretty young to be in the workforce if you're born in 2013 or 12, but you could be. These are your digital natives, okay? Your Gen Zs. They grew up really with this. They tend to be more pragmatic. They value that social political consciousness. They're known for a unique communication style. There's so much to leverage here, so much to learn. When we look at again the five different ways, there's enormous opportunities for us to think about how do we want to show up? How do we want to use this learning? A chance to blend experience with fresh ideas, to foster growth. So lots of opportunities around that. Kathy, I'm going to stop there. Is there anything you want to
Yeah,
add here?
absolutely, Carol. I love the points you're making about the differences in the generations. And
Yeah.
so then let's get really practical here. Some of the things that I've observed, some of the things my clients are telling me is in particular in relation to the values issue. I know that I've heard that there are some generations that might value like taking an active stance on social issues, regardless of whether or not it falls into your association's purview. So think gun control, right? Think abortion, women's rights, whatever it is, we're seeing that those newer to the workforce may want the associations to step in and weigh in. And then you have people of a different generation. I'll pick my own. I was born in 1963. I know, hard to believe, but in my day, that was left outside of the office. Unless it fell into your mission, you didn't do it. So the opportunity here is to recognize that we're coming from different lenses, seeing things through different lenses, and be open to hearing the other person's point of view, right? And associations that are being too strict need to loosen up a bit and recognize that we now have different generations in the workforce and we are not thinking from the same script, right? Same thing for transparency. Some generations want to know the why behind every decision. And I'll talk about this a little bit later when I talk about hierarchical structures, but when I started work, I did what I was told and never asked why because it wasn't the culture, right? People would gasp if someone as an associate would walk in and ask someone from a higher level the why are you asking me to do this, right? And then lastly, the different agendas is really that we're all coming in with different things that are important to us. And whether it's some people it's career, some people it's family. So thanks, Carol.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Great points, Kathy. The generational differences are opportunities, and it's going to demand.
Yeah.
And Kathy and I are definitely going to be talking a lot more about this. It's going to require really us. And I say opportunity, but I think for us to thrive, as Kathy points out, some of us who came into the workforce maybe in the 80s or 90s, again, a bit
Yeah.
more structured, and we lost that opportunity to share info. Perhaps that's what worked at that time. But today, it allows us to be more agile. I think leaders need to be thinking about being more empathetic to understand there are going to, Kathy, great example, around gun control. As an executive coach, I too have had a number of clients over the years, leaders struggle with this is not where they are choosing to communicate. It may not be in line with what their members are focused on, but it is an issue that others on their team care about, thinking about how do we bring empathy into the way that leader is working, identifying this and finding other ways. But I think again, leaders are showing up in different ways. We've moved so far from command and control to fostering empowerment and flexibility. Think hybrid work. We'll be talking a lot more about that.
Yeah.
To well-being, to meet employees, needs. So there's lots more for us to dive in here. Uh, Joseph,
Yes.
are there any questions there we should stop on before we continue moving forward?
Yeah, so not at this time, but I want to take this time to really remind everyone that questions are welcomed.
Yeah.
So certainly, thank you both. That was a great overview of who is doing the work. So now we do need to pivot to how to work and how the work is actually getting done. So the tools we use are evolving just as fast as our teams. So let's move on to a closer look at technology.
Yeah. And so here's what I would say. I recently was at a meeting of 300 business owners and coaches and consultants, and the number one topic they were talking about was AI. I mean, it's getting to the point where several of us are getting really exhausted about talking about it, but it's a trend and you need to be thinking about it. And you need to be thinking about it from all different approaches, right? First of all, we know that AI is evolving at a rapid pace. And so whether or not your association is embracing it, or your association is putting a lot of controls around it, whatever you're doing needs to keep being revisited time and time again. Because again, much like you have different generations in the workforce, you have different people who are going to be rule followers. And you have other people that are going to say, like, hey, I have no problem doing it at home on my personal computer and no one will ever know. And so we know that that's just a reality, right? Just like anything else, we also know that AI is a process, right? And so when I was at that meeting with those other leaders, what they talked about is the issue really isn't technology. When it comes to adoption, it really has to do with people, right? So you have people that are involved in the adoption or the implementation, you have products and services that are impacted, and you have processes. And so when you think about people, it's really like adopting any other large scale project. So maybe, I mean, how many of us have adopted new AMS systems, right? And you're horrified because it's so massive and you're feeling like it's going to impact your ability to do your work, right? And so many people are touched by it. Same thing with AI. It's a process to implement it. And because of that, people are involved. And people may, as Carol mentioned before, they may be fearful of the change. They may be fearful of the impact on their job. I know that I heard last December, I remember there were several restructures and several eliminations in the workforce of various departments, and they blamed it or pointed to AI. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But we saw that happening. And so, of course, people are nervous about AI coming in because they're wondering, how does this impact me? The other thing is they might be resisting it. And so maybe they're resisting it because of skills. Maybe they're resisting it because they're fearful of how it will impact their day-to-day responsibilities. Will it give me more work? Will it give me less work? Will it eliminate my job? Um, will somebody be, I've heard this before, I don't need people in my business, right?
Mhm.
I like to keep everything private. I like to do my job, nose to the grindstone, leave me alone. I don't need to have everything in a central area where everyone's going to be looking at it. And then, of course, there's people who say, I just don't have the skills for it. I'm just not up for it. And so the opportunity here, and Carol, I would love to have your opinions as well. I think from an opportunity aspect of it, we need to be thinking about bringing people in early as you start to make decisions around AI and be super transparent about what's happening, what you're doing. Um, I have one company that said they did a show and tell lunch and learn thing where different people said, here's how we're adopting AI in my department or on my cross-functional team where I've brought in advocacy and marketing and the meetings team. Here's how we're using it. Here's how you could use it. Give the opportunity to ask questions. And then I think the other part of it is, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked about the generational part of it, is help build alignment and buy-in by asking people's opinions, right? Where do you think this will work well? Where do you think there might be problems? The other part of adoption has to do with processes. And one of the things that we know well is that we have so many multifunctional teams and associations, right? I mean, when I think about the advocacy summits we used to run at the American Urological Association, where I last worked, we had so many teams involved in that. And so AI would involve multiple steps in that workflow. And so the opportunity is to have AI come in, map out the workflow, map out where there's duplication of effort, where there's timelines, deliverables, bottlenecks. But again, get everyone involved and be super transparent. So, Carol, what are you seeing and hearing?
Oh, Kathy, this is so rich. I think Kathy and I are both probably experiencing this. When I think used well, technology is like it can be a game changer. Again, all the stereotypes could be there. Oh, it's going to be harder generationally. I could not be more excited about the idea of thinking about mentorship here, and how we can learn from each other, not just, oh, because I'm a digital, I grew up with it and you're older, you might not. No, there's certainly we are just different people. There's some of us, well, obviously we're a lot more similar than we are different, but we have some sort of hardwired differences. And for some of us, the early adoption, Kathy made that point so beautifully, but I'm thinking about the ways we can support each other. The opportunities are enormous. The ones that I'm really excited about, and again, Kathy, I suspect you're seeing this as well, is some of my coaching clients very early on, identified how technology is allowing them to automate routine tasks, things that even as leaders and rising leaders that have taken a lot of time, how this has focused or it provided them so much more time for the work that we need, our both both our industry and the world, in terms of more time for strategic thinking, more focused time, for more emotional intelligence to keep on building out our empathy, to focus on developing our employees. We know these are the trends. This just factors in so beautifully to how we know that so many employees want to be led today. The opportunity again for leaders to be able to have more time to focus because they're using technology in ways, and really freeing up that time. It's one of the biggest things I'm noticing. And then the opportunity, to work cross generationally, across organizations, and share that idea of upskilling.
Yeah, and I love the fact about like asking questions of your team, like use your one-on-ones to say, what's the challenge? What are you seeing? What support do you need? And make it so it doesn't feel like you're dinging somebody just because they're not using AI, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I see Joseph writes, AI really is a tool. Joseph,
right.
with you 100%. These are tools. And I mean, it's just, we get more and more, are more and more tools, I mean, within the trends, if you will, things that we can tap into and leverage, for how we lead and how we work today in our organizations.
Yeah, and get to the bottom of, what's behind the resistance, like what's the challenge there, and ask some, open-ended questions so that you can get your staff all on board with it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking even more about communications. That Kathy is, foreshadowing this in such a major way, bringing more people in, communicating more frequently, communicating with more transparency, all the kinds of things. Kathy and I look forward to sharing more on that. But I think in tech, it's really important to get people in early.
Yeah, and Kathy and Carol, we actually do have a question before we
See ya.
transition to the next topic. So Hannah Gilbert is asking, any recommendations on addressing employee resistance due to environmental concerns and impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So resistance is one of the things that it's not exclusive to AI. There's resistance in so many things. So I love to ask what's behind the resistance. And I like to use the technique, and Carol, you probably use this as well in coaching. It's called the five whys, and ask, what is the resistance about? And then ask, why is that important? And why is that important? And why is that important? And why is that important? It sounds silly, but you're going to eventually get to what the concern really is, and not initially what they said. And as you're listening as a leader, listen to what they said, but more so listen to what they said is important to them.
So it's so true, Kathy. Yep.
That is honestly amazing because honestly, that moves us and leads us directly into our next topic. So let's take a closer look at the flattened hierarchy and what that
Yeah.
means for decision making.
Big one.
Yeah, it's just one of those, there are certain people, I think out in the human design world, they've been saying that 2026 is the start of a new cultural norm. And we're seeing this introduction of technology. We're seeing the five generations in the workforce, and boom, here we go. We're seeing these flattened hierarchies where you're seeing less direct authority. You're seeing the elimination of more managerial positions and middle management in particular. You're seeing these flatter organizations. And so when I think about those first two bullets, what I think about it is this cultural shift from the way things were when I'm walking out of grad school in 1986 into New York City, and there was a super big structure. There were tons of rules, tons of processes, checklists, and there was a definite hierarchical authority from you had associate one, associate two, you had specialist, you had manager, senior manager, VP, EVP. That is starting to go away. Will it go away quickly? I don't know. Will it go away forever? I don't know that either. But what I would say is now what we're seeing is this importance of having people that are it's not the title and the initials after your name, the EVP, the PhD, the CA, whatever. It's more towards your ability to influence, your ability to persuade, and your ability to inspire and engage your team. Those are the opportunities you need to be thinking about. How do I inspire? How do I engage my team? How do I tap into empathy? How do I build relationships? Because it's about relationships now, not about the old days of me walking into my office and doing things simply because someone said so, right? I said so, you must do this is a thing of the past. Now it's you have to inspire, build influence, build empathy, and then also give the reason why and be super transparent about why things are going on. And that loops back to the generational approaches. So when you're talking to people, like for instance, again, I'll point back to my generation. I am like in that last year of the baby boomers. I resonate clearly with people born more towards the late 60s and 70s. Um, again, I pretty much, if you gave me a process and a 10-step checklist, I'm like in my glory, like I'm so happy, right? When I have people that are newer to the workforce, they want more freedom, more ability, more flexibility. They want to be inspired. They want you to connect the mission and vision of your organization to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so take that opportunity to do this. And let's not forget, the generational differences that you're seeing in your office, whether it's bricks and mortar or it's virtual, is the same thing you're seeing among your members. And we want to build those relationships with our members and recognize that they're from different generations. And so maybe not joining committees so much as they used to, but maybe they would if you told them the importance of those committees and how it connects to their work. Carol, what are you thinking?
Great point. Great points, Kathy. Look, this is hard. Not for everyone. But for some people, it really is. Again, if we talk about, who's in our workforce right now, there's many people, baby boomers. Kathy and I both identify at the very end of that, at the very end of that, and perhaps we really identify more with the next generation. But the idea this can be hard for people. There are those who value the traditional structures. So certainly generational is one, but there's also work styles. There's just a reality. There are work styles. There's some people who prefer that. I saw a couple comments coming in the chats of, love a good work list. Give me a good checklist. Let me see, we go this, love to check off.
Yeah.
That turns me on. That's not what flattened hierarchy is about. This is a fundamental shift from that command and control, to a facilitative. Kathy and I are both coaches, and we trained and learned to be coaches. And what we're seeing and working, Kathy and I are doing the same thing I am. I'm working with many leaders in our association community who have terrific coaching skills. They are in fact bringing a coach-like approach. The why, Kathy, right? We're asking
Yeah.
why. I love the five whys myself, but they're asking why. They're giving the background. They're listening. It's two-way communication. I'm no longer talking at you. As coaches, Kathy and I aren't supposed to be talking this much, but today, of course, we're shifting our hats a little. We're not just coaches. We're having two-way. We want to have real two-way conversations, and this, is a fundamental shift. I have watched and worked with people who sort of are, gosh darn, I worked a long time to get to this, into this level, and that's the way it
Yes.
was managed. And that's what may have worked effectively at that time. And today there's a different way, and it's an exciting, I'm not here to sell this. I'm really here to say this is neat. Let's look at the opportunities while also recognizing for some people it is going to be more challenging. This can be hard for some people. It can be opportunity, though, certainly opportunity for organizations. I'm really interested in the matrix piece there, Kathy. What do you see in terms of, matrix, allows us to work across teams? How do you see this working, in terms of
Yeah.
hierarchy with the matrix teams?
Yeah, so 2 points. One is in regards to your question on the matrix organizations, what we're seeing is that decisions through collaboration, right? And so back when I started, I can remember we had our CEO, he would meet with the executive team, and there was a lot of top down, right? It was just the way it was. By the time I left the association world 3 years ago, we had a strategy team, we had an executive team, and it was decision by group.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see more of that group decisions and collaborative decision making, more open to viewpoints, less of that I'm the boss, do what I say, or here's what the directive is from the board. It's more collaborative. The other point I wanted to make is there was you said something that reminded me that when we talk about generational approaches, one of the things that I'm hearing that may or may not be true for all of you is that those that are newer to the workforce, so maybe they're in their workforce like less than 10 years, there is an expectation to be given a lot of guidance around their career pathways. as opposed to them doing it themselves and saying, this is my career, I want to map it out. So the opportunity for you is, do you have employee resource groups? Do you have mentoring relationships? Do you have onboarding partners that can help guide people that want that type of guidance and mentorship to say, I don't know what's next for me. I need someone to tell me, like, is there a leadership program that our organization has? Do we have access to coaching services? Do we have access to particular activities at ASAE that we're allowed to go to? Membership organizations you think I should join? And then the last thing I wanted to point back to is I mentioned before about the importance of being influential as opposed to hierarchical with the initials after your name. When you think of influence, there is an assessment. It's the influence style indicator assessment, and it talks. And I only mention it from the aspect of it talks about influencing styles and how you should think about what your influencing style is, whether you're a bridger, you're assertive, whether you're a rationalizer. That's me. I never met data I didn't love to get my viewpoint across. You're a negotiator and so forth. So if you want to know more about the importance of influence, I would take a look at the work around the influence style indicator and the 5 influencing styles.
Kathy, great suggestion. Terrific suggestion. Again, because the influence doesn't just sit, if you will, at the top.
Right.
There's really opportunities to, I think it's perhaps one of the biggest opportunities, to think about how that works. I have a number of senior coaching clients who they choose to, perhaps it's a weekly, perhaps it's a monthly, but to share their experience with a cohort of colleagues where it's really a back and forth exchange. They're learning about where they want to go, what they want to do, and where we can mix this with, it's not that both those who are new to the organization, but those who have been there for some time. There is a enormous appreciation, and for some, there some version of an expectation of shariness. And so, again, I don't want to get caught on mentorship, but I do want to just point out, when we think about this within hierarchies, it's an enormous opportunity, for mentorship and sharing experiences across the way, not only the most senior to the most junior to the mid to the so senior. There's
Yes.
so many. I've always included in my own personal board of directors people who are relatively new in the workforce, because they're going to come at things with a different perspective. Their belief systems maybe there may be things that are a little bit different. They may also look at it from a place, their worldview. They experienced COVID in a very different way than others of us who had already had a lot of experience, perhaps in remote work or whatnot. So there's just so much value in that flattened hierarchy. I think influence is a thanks for going down that path, Kathy. I cannot echo that enough. Joseph, any questions before we move
This
on? Please?
this is amazing.
Yes.
I'm really hoping that everybody is soaking all of this in because Carol said something earlier, where she was like, we're coaches, we're not supposed to talk this much. And I just want to let everyone know, apart from all of the accomplishments that they do have and possess, and expertise that they are sharing with us right now, they are our association career headquarters career coaches. They are a part of our rosters. And I just wanted to let you know as well that I have included the links in the chat so you can be aware of where to find them and all things Association Career HQ, which is our career center for ASAE. And I just wanted to really highlight that because they are highly resourceful. I have had many conversations with them, their time being available for us today to really just dive into the things that just matter right now. So that was really incredible because we spent the last 15 minutes really looking internally. So at our teams, our tools, and our structures. But none of this really happens in a vacuum, right? So to close out really all of our 4 pillars, we really need to kind of like zoom out because we've already looked within. So I think we should take a closer look at the environment and the external pressures that really shape our reality.
Joseph, thanks. I mean, it's almost like saying like this is a trend. I mean, this
Yeah.
is this is the world we live in, and in fact, the environment in which we all work in today's
Yes.
workplace is, I think of those of us working in the association space. we are so fortunate. This is a constantly evolving space. You just constant change because there's so many different parts of what we work and how we work. We just talked about technology, and the enormous impact it's having, certainly in our association space, but broadly across certainly across the workforce, across our entire society, across our world. There's so much. We talked about the flattened structures, and really looking at how this impacts both the way we lead, the way we're being led, the way we want to show up in this world, in the really open space, the opportunities. But then there's a lot of other things that we also have to be realistic about. And Kathy and I, we're not going to go down a dark space here, but we're going to talk about the reality of it's an uncertain time. There's a lot of uncertainty. And this is, think about if you go back generationally, I like structure, I like, it's a sure thing. And again, stereotypes there doesn't mean everybody's like that in any way. There's a little hardwire. Some of us we love the, sort of change, and some of us go, ugh. So there's just this is a little sense of a little bit of uncertainty here. I could go obvious. It's a time of economic, things that seem a little uncertain. There's just a lot of societal things. But let's go with the economic first, and let's talk about some realities in the world we're living in. We certainly are looking at organizational changes. There's layoffs going on. Kathy, I think you mentioned restructuring, things that are restructured. Think about that technology. I've heard the same kinds of things without data to back it up. Oh, AI is going to, that job's not going to be needed anymore. So many people are going to be doing things differently. Yeah, in fact, we probably are going to be, again, the environment doing things differently. But there's a reality of, there are restructurings going on all the time because we're in people business in so many ways. These are real people we're dealing with, our members, and our non-members. Why aren't they members? I'm always all about that. Why aren't they our members? What do they value? And we know our association community. Kathy and I have both been in a very long time. I came in as an ASAE member working in a trade association, and we valued the resources that ASAE provided us back then. And then things obviously have evolved, but what are the things that people value? Certainly, the idea of regulatory and policy change. Again, Kathy mentioned the idea of how do we mesh some policy things that are going on in the world with values. Again, leaders have a lot of why to talk about, a lot of opportunities here to be looking at, the environment in which we work in. Those changes, again, a lot of uncertainty, but with that can also mean a lot of opportunity. I think the most obvious that we really have to talk about now is like the hybrid world we work in, or the remote world, or the return to office work. Or there's so much here. I put this all under the bigger piece of really looking at the more flexible schedule, some version of what is balance. Balance to one person looks like this, balance to someone else looks like that. There's no one, it would be so nice if we could just open the package, so throw it into a little cup, add some water, stir it, and oh, here's the magic space. It's just not like that. This is a moving target. Again, it's the environment. It's constantly changing. And so some version of looking at how do we communicate that? What does that mean to how leaders are working today? So, there's people, more organizations are even looking at like the gig economy. There's so many things that influence that, and we can I think get into this in more detail. We can talk with that what that's going to look like from a communications perspective. But both, again, the realities of the world we live in terms of technology and all the opportunities that's going to be. There's lots in here. Kathy, let me throw this over to you and see if there's things you want to add to that before we start go deeper into some of the opportunities.
Yeah, I think the one thing that struck me as we were talking about this before we got on this learning was the flurry of regulatory and policy changes, and when there's so much change going on at once, whether it be the adoption of AI, whether it be restructures, or whether it be policy changes and elimination of like grants because of like limited government staff, or things, or visas that may stop people from coming to your annual meeting. All of those things can cause stress and pressure on our team. And so, as leaders, how do we tap into empathy and recognizing that even though it is what it is, and we're not talking politics, even though there are policies out there, whether we agree with them or not, whether they give us agita or frustration or not, these are changes that our teams have to deal with. And how do we listen to how they're handling all of this and pivoting, right? It reminds me of when COVID in March, what was it, March 16th? I remember our CEO talking about us leaving the office, and several of us were like, you better take your plans. It'll probably be 2 weeks. We'll be out, right? And then all of a sudden, we're massively trying to redo contracts, get rid of meetings, move to virtual, learn Zoom, and stuff like that. All of these are pressures, and our ability to navigate change differs.
Absolutely. Great, Kathy, great points. I absolutely, there's so many opportunities here for us to think about, how we as leaders want to show up, how those, obviously those joining us today, how you're thinking about showing up differently, the empathy piece, the adaptability. The title, certainly of our session is all about the idea of adapting, adapting, adapting to what is needed today to meet the needs of both our members, but our workforces, what that looks like. Shall we stop, Kathy? Shall we stop for questions before moving right on to let's get into some of the opportunities and talk in a little more detail?
Yeah, I actually, if you don't mind, there were two, and Kathy did respond to one, but just in case anybody may have missed this. So the question was, what was that influence called with the influence style indicator? And so Kathy just wanted to confirm. So this is for everyone across the board. So the assessment is the influence style indicator. Um, and Kathy was just sharing that she was certified in it. And the theme is that there are five influencing styles that we can all tap into at any time. If you wanted to echo that, that's fine. And then I had another question for you.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Of course. So this question, thank you, Joy, for this question. So given the flattened hierarchy, just addressing one of our previous topics, do you have any suggestions around employee retention when you have team members who have many years with the organization but are finding limitations and growth opportunities with middle management positions being eliminated or changed?
Kathy, I've got something there, but you're welcome to start. You want
Go
to?
for it.
I think, again, that I certainly understand this, and I've heard this from others as well. And I think that there's more opportunity to look at the matrix, places to lead. So it may not have a formal leadership title, but to help, excuse me, excuse me, help somebody again continue to develop the opportunity to lead in other, maybe more project leads. I think matrix teams are one of the biggest opportunities right now in flattened hierarchies. Kathy, where do you want to go with that?
Yeah, I love that answer. And I again, so having been in the C-suite in an organization, I can't tell you how many times I had directors and managers come to me with this exact issue, right? And so we would often explore, just as you said, what else is there that will give them that same type of feeling, regardless of the title, right? So can they lead? Can they take on the staff lead of a committee? Can they lead a project? And then figure out, if I can't give them the title, are there other things that are equally important to them that they might find acceptable? Or are you preparing them for the next best job? And it may not be at your organization, but then they become your biggest fan and they talk about you favorably, particularly on Glassdoor.
Kathy, I think that's one of the most important things because yeah, I know I jumped right in with an answer, but I do want to be sure to communicate quite a bit of empathy there because this is a absolutely a very significant issue, and I think Kathy taking it all the way to the end, it may be preparing somebody for their next opportunity, but I think the opportunity, again, I keep on thinking about this is where technology is going to allow leaders
Yeah.
more time to be able to focus on that development and helping support people in their growth as well. And of course, we know people also have a lot of responsibility for their own growth. So I think that's there's multiple opportunities there.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is just incredibly resourceful. And I want to also echo for both of you that a lot of people may have noticed that you are all solutions based. So just to add to that, that brings us to our last slide here for us to really incorporate and implement some solutions. So this will be
Yeah.
sort of like an open forum. So please, like I said, questions are welcomed. And I do see one that just came through. So we can start with the question first before we dive into how to capitalize on trends. So this one is, thank you, Laura, for your question. Giving more responsibilities without compensation is difficult for folks who aren't newer to the workforce. How do you compensate in the flat structure?
I gotta admit, this one's a tough one for me. I don't actually know the answer
Good
to this
question,
one.
Laura.
Yeah.
It is. I was going to say the same thing. This is not an easy answer.
Mhm.
And I hate to say it, there may be a little bit case by case. I'm really glad Laura's asking this question, just to make sure everyone can see it.
Yeah.
Joseph, did you read it? Can you
Yes,
more?
I have it read here, and I will also.
Yeah. How do we compensate in the flat structure? I think Kathy, you did make a point of identifying, what else is important for this person.
Mhm.
I mean, this is where we really have to think about the idea of leading today requires really understanding the individual, the people we're leading. And I think there's an enormous sort of opportunity to understand, be adaptable, understand, one style is not going to work for others, recognizing there may be. I get that. Yeah, I think Jim put in the
Yeah.
yeah in the piece, compensation can be more than actual dollars. Be creative. I
Yeah.
Jim, really appreciate your putting that in there. And Laura, hear you in terms of compensate. Again, too frequently we go to it's money. And of course that matters. Of course that matters. So not to say it does not, but how do we do that?
Yeah, and I will say, I love the point that Jim made. I remember actually talking to a client, and when I got down to the bottom of what was really important to them, believe it or not, it wasn't the compensation, it was more vacation time and
Yep,
the ability to work remotely. And
great.
so sometimes we think it's the compensation, and it is, and other times it's not. So just dig in and figure out what else might be important to them. But I did want to give time to talk about the opportunities
Yeah.
here. So I can kick it off with trust if you like. So
Yeah,
one of the
get us started.
yeah, so we've gone through a lot of things that are going on out there and in the trends, and I would say that trust is the foundation of the greatest teams and organizations, period. It starts with trust. And if I was to oversimplify it, I think about this example. Think about your work best friend, right? For me, it was Patricia, right? Today it would be Joseph and Carol, right? Then think about the person who grinds your gears, right? I'm not going to name that person. I don't work with anyone, just my cats, my dogs, my husband, and whatever. But think about the person that grinds your gear. They say the exact same thing in an email. Where is that project? Right? I trust Patricia. So I'm probably going to go, oops, my bad. Forgot to give it to you. I'm right on it. When it comes to the person that grinds my gears, my trust is so low, I might be skeptical and resistant, right? I might have a different approach. So the more you can build trust with your teams, the more apt they're going to be open and receptive, explore possibilities, be open to opportunities. How about you, Carol? What are you thinking in
I,
terms
I,
of the
I mean,
opportunities?
Yeah, I'm with you as well. Trust is foundational. Without it, it's incredibly difficult to adapt, to ask others to follow. I think, and I know, Kathy's is the same as I am. We've worked with many teams over the years and many leaders to help them think about I use the term norms. What are the expectations? What are the norms? How is it? How do we work? And I don't mean, I set them up from a high on high, and I send them down to you. I mean,
Yeah,
we create them. A term we use in coaching is we co-create. And I know when I was, managing a team and had the opportunity to help lead a group of, I thought they were all superstars. We co-created the way we worked, and we shared how we received information, what we needed to share, and we identified ways. And we used to say this is how we work with lots of adaptability because this was how our team worked. It wasn't necessarily how another department may have worked. So we created our own norms. We also, and my responsibility at that point was modeling the behaviors. I think we forget we got to walk the talk. We got to be consistent. We got to be authentic. It cannot be because this is what the book told me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be, we've got to embrace it. We've got to really walk it. And we've got to create the kind of, we'd use the term, of course, psychological safety. We've got to create the kind of environment where we do truly trust that we believe we want our voice can be heard. So we're building in a culture where we're connecting the values, what we have identified we value, what we know others value. It's actually going back a little bit what Laura and Jim were talking about. Jim is pointing out that some people, the idea of recognition goes a long way. What do people value?
Yeah.
And so really understanding that trust is just, wildly important, and it's foundational. Um,
Yeah,
Kathy, look at
Carol and Kathy, I was going to add too, because someone
yeah,
just said something as well to echo this. And once again, like, thank you for the suggestions and questions, everyone. So Alyssa actually just said recognition is so key. Even
yes,
if people say they don't need it, of course they do like it.
Yeah.
Um,
And figure out how they like it, right? So
yeah,
some people like to be recognized in an all-staff meeting, right? Other people want that one-on-one personal recognition.
it goes into
So
what words of affirmation.
yep.
yes. Yes.
Amy's in the chat box is saying the same thing. A healthy environment.
I think I think with echoing Jim's suggestions where he was saying come up with creative ways, right?
Yeah.
And there's just so many different things to do besides compensation, like you were saying, Kathy, in relation to providing PTO. But I just believe that words of information are also very important to add on
Yes.
to those additional things, and that's in every area of life, honestly, whether it's professional, personal.
Abs-
Um,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know one association that I worked with used, and I don't have any relationship with this company, but it was Wardco. And so we could actually go in and whenever we did a project, we could write a note and it would go out to those employees and we'd be like, thank you for our recent advocacy summit, and then point out specific people and what they did. And then we would actually tie it to the competencies that they met. So it
Yep.
was super fun. You
mhm.
love to be seen.
Yeah.
But with
I
that,
just
I
had
think,
something.
yeah,
Go ahead, Kathy. I was just going to say
yeah,
I had something more intimate because Destiny,
please.
thank you so much for this suggestion. So, yes, she was just sharing her experience in a former role. She would ask her team how they would like to be recognized. And some didn't want public accolades and were thrilled with, something as simple as a Diet Coke waiting for them on their desk. And I'm one of the people, I love something as simple as Twizzlers. So
Yes.
if that's around,
Duly
that
noted.
Creating that environment in
Yeah,
which one
me,
really knows they're
Starbucks.
appreciated, and it's the whole range of appreciation.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
it's a whole range. It takes us beautifully, Kathy. We're in it, and the opportunity too. Joseph, we're here about the idea of focusing on people. Getting buy-in, getting engagement. So much of this is really it's certainly really it's understanding. It's personalizing. Again, we're talking recognition.
yeah,
It's really understand how people work. It's empowering people. This is hugely important. You're
yes,
empowering them, delegating authority. No longer does it come from one space. Delegating authority, not just tasks, reinforce that how the contributions come right in and share the shared values. This is not, I'm not doing this just for me. This is, I see I'm part of our organization's shared mission, the values. How we do this is, a lot of empathy. Again, this is how we show up people. And then, the idea of, if we're empowering team members, we want to continue to develop people. Kathy, please, I'm
yeah. So,
laundry listing here. Dive in.
and also with buy-in and engagement, bring people in early. I know I mentioned it before, but one of the number one complaints I hear, both when I was at the association world and as an executive and team coach, is I hear that people just want to be brought in early and they want to be given the opportunity to be invited and if it doesn't pertain to them now, they can opt out. And they want to know what's going on, right? They want to know how what they're doing connects to whatever's happening out there, which really goes into the third opportunity, which is increase the transparency of the what and the why, right? Recognize that you don't have a bunch of workers that are cut from the same cookie cutter. And so people want to know what and why. And then when you talk about the how, they want to know where their authority starts, where their authority stops. When do they need to check in? How often do they need to check in? Or as Carol said, can they operate completely independently and only come to you if they have, an issue of concern. And then Carol, I know you are an expert in the communication area, so I love to turn that over to you as well.
Oh, thanks, Kathy. And I know you too have a great deal of expertise in that. But the idea of that communication, again, communication, we can send all we want, but if it's not received, it is a two-way process. And too
Yes.
frequently we think, well, I told you that. And again, this is the differences and similarities. Some of us, need the detail. I always say, well, there's what, there's how, there's who, there why kinds of styles. Won't go too far into that, but communication styles. Some of us listen for just give me the headline. There's some, give me all the detail. Some I want to know who's involved. What does that mean to me? How's am I impacted? And why? Why are we doing this? I need all the background. So the idea of it, as Kathy says, we need to communicate frequently, consistently. It needs, though, to be two-way. We've got to be sure we're being heard in ways. That's the why. That's the bringing people in. That's the influence. That's the buy-in. And we can't end without recognizing, today there's so many tools. We talked about technology, so many ways to communicate. There's endless ways. And we need to think about what's the best way for us to communicate. I'm a believer in communication norms, just like we have work norms. This is how we
Yeah.
work. Communication norms. This is how we communicate.
Yeah.
And I know lots of people are using Slack for
Yeah.
communication internal. What works for us? And figuring out, what tools are we using to communicate, project management communication, all the pieces, external communication, so much in here that,
Mhm.
we could spend 2 hours going into all that. Um,
No,
but I
this
know, yeah,
this was incredible, wholeheartedly. So I want everyone to know too, if you have any further questions, you can reach out to us. So our information, I did provide our LinkedIn's in the chat towards the beginning. So definitely look for us on LinkedIn. So like we were saying before, Carol Vernon, incredible. Kathy Shanley, incredible.
thank you.
I'm just saying, like, everybody is
And Joseph
Listen,
Watkins,
back to you.
incredible.
but
Back
this
to you.
this thank you so much. This was highly resourceful. I enjoy you both on more levels than one. So that really does bring us to the end of our hour. So I just want to say a huge thank you to our speakers for sharing such practical insights. And just thank you to everyone for joining the conversation. So I want to let everyone know we will be sending out a recording of this session as well shortly. So keep an eye out on your inbox. It takes about probably up to an hour. So we hope you leave here today feeling more equipped to navigate these changes and lead with confidence. So another one, happy holidays. Have a great afternoon. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone. Hope you get your favorite cookies.
Carol, any final remarks?
Nope. Ditto it to everything you've said. Privileged to be with everyone. A pleasure. And I hope we connect at the very least. Let's make sure we connect on LinkedIn.
Yes, amazing. Thank you all so much.